Today's stories may be a bit haunting, haha. And of course, viewer discretion is advised, though these ones are paranormal, they're pretty tame. But if you do have a story you'd like to send my way, please go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. This story takes place several years ago, but the memory is so heavy that I can see it and revisit it as if it happened last night. The whole event had a profound effect on me, and I'm hoping that by sharing my story, I can help others get an outsider's perspective of the paranormal. Prior to this all happening, I was honestly quite the skeptic when it came to the paranormal. I wasn't the type to say that I didn't believe people, just the type to say, I believe you, but there's no way to prove what happened to you actually happened. I guess I was sort of agnostic when it came to the paranormal, if that makes sense. The experience occurred during the summer when I was house-sitting for a family friend. They had a beautiful old colonial-style house on the outskirts of a rural town, surrounded by dense woods. It was probably the most beautiful house that I have ever seen, and I absolutely adored everything about it. The house had been in their family for a few generations, and while it was well maintained, it still had that unmistakable air of antiquity. Creaking floorboards, musty smells, creepy little shadows in the corners of the room, all of it. The woman that owned the house was actually childhood friends with my grandmother, and her kids knew my parents, and so forth and so on. And that's why when it was mentioned at a get-together that they needed someone to watch the house for a bit, I immediately jumped at it. I had spent some time there as a little girl, so I knew the area too, and I was nothing shy of excited to stay in the house. The first 2 days and nights were completely uneventful. They had asked me to do some cleaning for them, which I had no issue with, and since no one was there, it wasn't like the chore list was extensive. I was just enjoying the days to myself, and I was curling up with my Kindle in their little study room enjoying the feeling of this beautiful house. Now, the third night, that was when things got creepy. The day was fine. I had actually gone to the store to get some food for myself that day, and had spent some time actually having a lovely little picnic in the woods. It was that evening that the feeling changed. The first thing I felt was this deep sense of unease. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I felt an inexplicable sense of dread, as if I was being watched by something. I tried to shake off the feeling and distract myself with a movie, but the whole time I was watching it, I just kept feeling like something was going to sneak up on me and grab me. I thought that maybe I was just feeling a bit homesick. It kind of made sense. I was feeling off because I was missing my own bed. I figured I would force myself into getting comfortable and would just stay up late watching my queue on Netflix until I passed out. I did just that too. I watched like 3 movies, and at some point late into the night, I ended up completely passing out on the couch. At some point, around 2 or so in the morning, I jumped up, like I was having one of those falling dreams, and I shot awake. After catching my breath, I laughed and closed my eyes again, but I was struggling to fall back asleep. I kept hearing what sounded like a light tapping sound, like someone was tapping on the wall or a door or something. For a while, I was adamant that I was going to just ignore it and go back to sleep, telling myself that it was an old house, so it was just something to do with that. But then, that light tapping turned into a really loud bang. That bang made me jump up again and look around, trying to see if someone was breaking in or something. I got up, glanced at the doors and out the windows, and As one would expect at 2-something in the morning, there was nobody there. I went back to the couch, but before I could sit down, I heard that same bang again. And it was definitely coming from the back of the house, near where the bedrooms were. I walked down the hallway towards the guest bedroom, and the whole time, I could feel that static feeling you get on your arms when you're starting to freak out. I got back to the guest bed and I pushed the door open to see what it was that was making the noise, and that's when I pretty much lost any semblance of calm. The room was super dark, but I could see a figure standing in the room and staring out the window. It looked to be an older woman in a long nightgown. Her face was gaunt and her skin looked pale, almost blue. I stood there freaking out inside, staring at what was clearly some kind of apparition just watching the side yard from the window. I was thinking that I needed to scream or run or something. Then she turned to look at me, and her eyes were seriously hollow. There was nothing but darkness there, but I could tell that she was staring at me. I got hit with this horrible feeling of despair and sadness, until she reached out towards me, and then it was fear again. I admit that I screamed. I wasn't really screaming at her, just the situation, and I pulled the door shut and took off down the hallway. I kept running until I got outside. I ended up saying screw it and camping out in my car that night, mostly because I couldn't bring myself to go back inside. When the sun came up, I figured I should stop being so pathetic and went back into the house. It took me a bit, but I did muster up the courage to go to the guest room and see if, for some reason, she was still there. She wasn't, of course, but I did figure out what that banging sound was. Both curtain rods that were on the windows had been pulled off the holders and thrown to the ground. I didn't realize it's the night before when I saw her looking out the window, but it makes sense. I actually called the owner to tell her about the story, because she's the type that I knew would love it. And she laughed when I finished my retelling. She said that she knew who it was, that it was her great-grandmother, and that the current guest room was once her bedroom. She mentioned that, in her words, her spirit sometimes gets antsy in the summer and wants to get outside into the garden, and she basically throws a fit. When I mentioned the curtains, she said that she had recently replaced them, and that her great-grandmother must not have liked them. She asked me to just put them off to the side, and that, as long as her grandma could see out the window, she probably wouldn't be too much of a problem. I really wish that she would have mentioned that the house was haunted, and that she knew it. It would have been really helpful for me, though I probably still would have freaked out. I did what she asked. I moved the curtains off to the side, and I made sure to tell her spirit that she apologized for blocking the view, and sure enough, nothing else happened. I didn't feel uncomfortable again in that house for a single minute after that. Since that night, I have never been able to shake the memory of that ghostly woman, and that profound sadness that seemed to emanate from her. She lived in a very different time, and it seems really sad that she's stuck in her home like that, but I guess so long as she can see the garden, she's okay with it. To those that hear this and may be skeptical of the paranormal, I understand. I was like that too, unsure of the idea of ghosts and haunted houses, but my experience in that old house has forever put me on the side of being a believer, and I see that there are indeed things that exist beyond our understanding. I hope that by sharing my story, I can help others who have experienced similar encounters to feel less alone, and, perhaps, encourage those who are curious to approach the unknown with both caution and respect. After all, sometimes the scariest things are the ones that we can't see or understand, and the mysteries that lurk in the shadows may be far more real than we ever imagined. I think I'll post this here just to see what others think of this experience. I'll try to keep it brief but thorough. Around 2 years ago now, I was working in landscaping, which meant that I woke up at 5 a.m. and was at work by 6 a.m. Sometimes my now fiancé would spend the night with me for no particular reason other than to spend the night. One morning, I woke up and got ready for work, and then left for work. Everything seemed normal, just another early morning. Around 1 p.m., I got a call from my fiancé asking where I was. I was really confused, but I told her that I was at work like always. She questions me and asked if I had gone in late or something, to which I told her, no, I left just like always. She then tells me that she vividly remembers me coming up to the bed and crawling in with her, saying that I wasn't feeling good and that I was going to take the day off. She questioned me, and I put my arm around her, and then we both drifted off to sleep. That did not happen, and I just chalked it up to her having a vivid dream. About 2.5 months later, the same circumstances, I get another frantic call at 7 a.m. My fiancé is not a morning person, and we usually sleep until noon if she has the day off. So I was immediately wondering what happened. She tells me that it happened again. Only this time, when I went to get in bed with her, she said, "You're not my fiancé." To which, whatever was posing as me got angry and said how did she know. This freaked her out, and she said that she suddenly felt like she was in danger. So she finally sat up and looked towards where the voice came from and realized that nothing was there. I eventually managed to calm her down and was convinced that she just had a bad nightmare or something. We talked later that night, and she said that whatever it was, it felt dangerous. I'm a believer in the paranormal, but I had lived in this particular apartment for about 2 years at that point, and had never experienced anything. The next day, she decided to stay the night again since I didn't have to work, and she felt safer sleeping with me that night due to the previous morning. I agreed, and we went to bed like normal. That night around 3 a.m., I had woken up to use the bathroom. Still half asleep, I do my thing, and suddenly the curtain to the shower flies open. I'm not talking about moving a little bit either. I mean, it was completely closed, and suddenly it was pushed all the way to the other side, showing the shower to me. I'm immediately awake and aware now and jump out of the bathroom. I stand there for a few seconds, almost waiting for something else to happen, but nothing ever did. I didn't go back to sleep that night, and I told my fiancée about what happened when she woke up. A few other small things happened after this too, but I'll end this here to see what y'all think of this. I'm honestly still confused about it to this day, and never really understood what was going on for the rest of the time that I lived in that room. But thank you all for reading and giving me a bit of your time. So, my sister had a birthday yesterday, and I was spending some time with her at her house, and we were talking about our childhood memories together. I brought up the subject of our earliest memories that we could recall. And I told her my earliest memory, and she explained that hers happened to be a dream. And in that dream, she said that she saw a very creepy man. She said that she can still see the face of the man very vividly, which I find astounding, because she was 3 years old when she had this dream. She turned 31 yesterday. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a hard time remembering the faces of people that I met recently, let alone am able to recall the face of someone I had never met before in one of my dreams when I was just 3 years old. She showed me a picture of what this man looked like that she had seen, and the picture was that of Nosferatu. If you're not familiar with that name, look him up. I believe he's also called Orlok. Anyways, he's a vampire. A very creepy-looking vampire with claws. I bring this all up because I've always had a strange feeling about myself, and if I might be connected to something that isn't really explainable. I was at an event when I was younger and saw this orb that was colored neon white and blue. That's how I would explain it, but it wasn't shaped like an orb. More like the dog off of Nightmare Before Christmas. I could tell that no one in the room noticed it, but I didn't really feel like it was out of place. I grew up in a cul-de-sac right beside the woods, and on the edge of the cul-de-sac written in red were the words, "Beware of Doug." I always wondered what that meant. It may not be of anything of significance, but it always gave me the creeps. While standing on the edge of those woods, I could always hear a creaking noise coming and going. I always imagined it being a screen door just opening and closing, but as I got older, I thought that it may have been the sound of a noose. I'm still not sure what it was, but that definitely gave me the creeps. The next story is several years later when I was about 17 years old, and I was on my way to pick up my sister from work. She was getting off at midnight. I was about to turn on this certain road leading to her work, and by that road was a cemetery. On the edge of the cemetery was a sidewalk, and on that sidewalk was this woman in a white gown walking barefoot. I remember that she had brown hair that went down to the middle of her back, and just as I was about to turn onto the road, she started to turn and look at me. I got spooked and I didn't look back. Several months later, on New Year's Eve, at around midnight, me and my friends were driving on the town square, and my friend asked if we had seen that girl walking. And I asked what she looked like, and he explained the exact same thing that I had seen. Except when I saw her, she wasn't carrying anything, especially not a present. After that, we actually went looking for her, and we're at a spot that some guy had hung himself at, and then it started snowing. So, if you guys could give me some insight onto what this all could be, I would love to hear your thoughts. Hello everyone. I, male, 22, am going to a college in Ohio. I live in a fraternity house that used to belong to the town. The school buys out properties and houses students in them. My house has been displaying some interesting encounters. Last year, around February or March, one of my housemates and I were talking in the hallway outside the bathroom. We were there for at least 30 minutes. The bathroom was empty, no one went in or out, and then the shower suddenly turned itself on. For context, the shower handle is one that points to the ground when off, and rotates counterclockwise to turn it on. We looked at each other and we went to check it out. The handle was turned 90 degrees counterclockwise. I turned it off and we resumed our conversation. Last semester, around September, I was at esports practice. One of my friends had sent me a Snapchat of my room from the outside, asking what I was doing. When I opened the photo, there was a figure standing in my room. This was more concerning considering my room is a single, and I am the only one with a key, outside of the skeleton keys kept by campus security. At this point, we had assumed it was the spirit of the old man who, conveniently enough, passed away in the room that I'm in. At the end of last semester, around early December, my girlfriend, female, 20, and I were sitting on my bed talking. We heard a voice outside of my door. Both of our heads snapped in the direction, as it was either a young or female voice. The rest of the house is male. When we asked the others about it, who were all downstairs, no one was outside my door, they all swear that they didn't hear anything or do anything. A few weeks ago, my girlfriend, one of my frat brothers and his girlfriend were in the living room playing Mario Kart when there was a sudden, loud bang. We all went to check it out. The shower curtain rod had fallen from its fastened spot. 2 years living there, and it had never fallen before. Finally, last night was one of the weirdest. I heard the same voice from last December, and it was trying to speak to me inside my own head. There was what seemed to be radio interference, best I can describe it, as it kept cutting out. It began to imitate sounds outside. I would hear a car drive by, and then a few moments later hear a distorted version of it in my head. After this went on for a while, it screamed at me, "Effing listen!" Censored, of course. I hadn't planned on discussing this, hoping it was just a dream, until my girlfriend told me that she heard a growl this morning, and asked if I had experienced anything. Our conclusion, as of now, is that there are 2 spirits in this house. The old man, who's peaceful, and then whatever the other thing is. Any assistance on identifying it or general advice would be welcome. Thank you in advance to everyone's help. Updating information as of February 22nd, 2023. My fraternity brother, male, 20. His girlfriend, female, 19. My girlfriend and I took turns going under with the Estes method. We got some partial information when the other 3 were under, but the spirit seemed to be extremely happy to speak to me, as it yielded the most results. This is going to sound weird, and I'm still having trouble processing it all, but it seems that the spirit wants me. I'm not exactly sure what it means by that, but it definitely does not sound good. For example, when asked, "What do you want?" the spirit would respond, "him," whilst I was under. My girlfriend has a somewhat special connection to energy. I don't know the official term, but she's an empath, and it feels that she can control how the energy flows through her. I don't know if I'm even describing that correctly. She's been using her energy to protect me, and the spirit knows it. It repeatedly was telling her to leave the room, leave the house, not come back. We tested having her leave the room, and the aggressiveness increased, resulting in my quitting when I heard a voice scream, "He will be mine." Chilled to the bone, I removed the headphones and blindfold, and I called the session to a stop. Since doing the Estes method about a week ago, most of the activity has died off, with the exception of things occasionally falling off their sound resting places, the TV randomly turning on, off, or pausing, and I'm having a hard time staying asleep. A few days ago, my girlfriend and I both tested positive for COVID. Although I doubt it's connected to the spirit, it definitely has not helped settle any nerves, and we are now quarantined to my room. Hopefully this added info helps anyone who might have an idea of what's going on, or the previous commenters with additional thoughts of what to try next. Thank you to everyone who has prayed, thought of, or tried this far to help, and to anyone in the future who does the same. Updated info as of March 12th. Note, this was written right after the incident into my notes on my phone, so I could document the encounter and check for grammar later. I thought I had heard my girlfriend talking to me. She told me that she was missing me. She told me that she loved me. She told me that she is with me. Then, I thought she told me to open my eyes, so I did. I was met with the face of our Squishmallow, Willie the Dragon. I began shaking violently, my heart racing and hearing a pounding in my head. I was completely terrified. I was unable to speak, trying to rouse her. I was trying to tap her with my foot, but to no avail. All of a sudden, it stopped, and I'm now typing this. I've never felt that way before. I've never had this occurrence before, and I'm extremely freaked out. I don't think that I'm sleeping for the rest of the night. Thoughts after reflection of the event. I don't know if it was the beginning phases of possession, a panic attack, sleep paralysis, or a combination of a few of them. I've had an anxiety attack before, but this was a completely different feeling and experience. I've done some research online, but have not found anything useful yet. If anyone else stumbles upon this and has any idea of what may have happened, please tell me. I'm still freaked out. And March 17th, 2023. This morning, my girlfriend wanted to talk to me about something that happened last night. I have no recollection of this conversation. At around 2:45 a.m., I opened my eyes and said, "Would you please get out of my freaking bed?" pointing to the bottom corner of my bed. My girlfriend asked me who I was talking to. I responded with, "The stranger on the bed," gesturing back to the corner. She asked me, "Did you open your eyes?" I responded with yes. She then asked, "And what did you see?" But I didn't answer. I know that sleep talking is a thing, but she said that I seemed completely coherent, and we had an entire conversation. That is creepy as hell. Back in '98, my best friend Jessica and I were really into ghosts and gore. We would have her dad rent Faces of Death on the weekends, camp out at her house, and just indulge. Working at the video store was your typical video store employee back in the 90s. Late 20s, single, and lives with his mom. He and his mom lived in the neighborhood for quite a while, so he had all the stories. We would spend hours in the video store looking over videos and conversing with Jim. Jim had all the neighborhood stories. There was this house at the end of my street, closer to Jessica's house, that constantly had families moving in and out, all short stays, no longer than a year. Our high school bus stop was directly in front of this home. The longest tenant in the home were a gothic kid and his older mom. They stayed for the better part of a year. While at the video store one day, Jim tells us the story of the house at our bus stop and why no one seems to be able to live in it for an extended amount of time. The story goes that there was a party in the house back in the 70s, and supposedly, a woman was decapitated, wrapped in the carpet, and then relocated. Needless to say, my friends and I must investigate. By this time, the house is empty again. She spends the night at my house, and we planned to sneak out in the middle of the night to check it out. The time comes, it's 2, 3 in the morning. Jess and I, for whatever reason, crawl on all fours down the street until we're a safe distance from my house, enter the house through the backyard, past the pool, used it as a restroom, and proceeded into the house through the kitchen. The kitchen area is an open floor plan attached to the living room with the bathroom and the bedrooms breaking off. We were being really disrespectful. I can't recall what we were doing or saying, but it wasn't nice. We walked into the bathroom closest to the kitchen, and we started to smell this horrid stench. Something along the lines of rotting meat. We walked into the bathroom, and all of a sudden, this bright green orb comes shooting out of the toilet headed straight towards us. We screamed and ran out the back door, from which we came, past the swimming pool and past the window of the bathroom that we just ran out of. The entire bathroom was illuminated a bright green color, and we ran our back ends back to my house to never go back. What the hell was that? It's hard for me to explain things through text, so please bear with me. I guess I'll start this story almost 10 years ago when I was 6 or 7. I stayed, and still do, with my grandparents. They lived in a 2-bedroom single trailer with an added-on room. Keep this in mind for later. So, one day, I was asleep and my little sister was in the bed, and my mom had stayed that night, so she slept in the same bed also. All of a sudden, my eyes popped open, and my heart started beating really fast. I thought that I had just woken up from a nightmare. As soon as I sat up, I saw this short shadow thing, and the hall light was on, so I saw the thing turn into the room. Its head looked like a sideways lemon, kind of like Stewie, and it was moving its head side to side as it was gliding across the floor to me. I hid under the covers and called my mom. I didn't see it again until I was at my cousin's house. We were in her attic, and all of my younger cousins could see the same shadow thing, except for the adults. It was slamming the door open and closed, and once it saw me, it started going faster. After that, I didn't see it again. Fast forward to 2021. In December of 2020, there was an incident that caused me to be depressed, and I was home all the time by myself. I was like 15 at the time. So, I was in the kitchen about to fix myself something to eat, until I got this dark feeling telling me to get out of the house now. I looked down the hall, and it got really dark. So I ran outside, prayed, and I felt way better. Ever since then, it felt like someone was watching me every time I'm at my grandparents' house. Now I'm going to get into the recent sightings. Around fall of 2021, I was in the added-on part of my grandparents' trailer, and I looked outside. I saw an orange or red-looking person. They had no knees, calves, and no head. It looked like a corpse to me. It was just walking, so I opened the door thinking it could have been my grandfather, but nobody was there. In 2022, my grandparents got a new trailer put in the same spot. Then, again, I'm there by myself every day. Ever since we started staying there, I get this feeling of dread. It's mostly in my grandmother's room, so I avoid going in there all the time. Me and my mom and little sister have been seeing this lady with a long white dress out of the corner of our eyes. And when it's not that entity, it's a shadow one. So, today, I was in the kitchen, and the trailer we have now is flipped, so where the kitchen is now is where the added room was. I looked out and I saw the orange-looking thing again. But I saw the whole body this time. It looked as if it was gliding. It spooked me. Usually I would think, oh, it's a bird. But this time, I started shaking and almost cried. I took 30 minutes to calm down, and I got back up and went into the kitchen again, and then I saw another one. But this one was all black with white eyes, standing the exact same way as the other gliding one. The house is by an old abandoned home, and one of my close neighbors passed away, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but I'm scared to go back home. I told my grandma, and she told me just to pray. But what do you all think? When I was a child, I had 2 separate experiences that may have been supernatural, or may have simply been my mind playing tricks on me. However, when I was about 18 or 19, I experienced something that was definitely supernatural. On the southern tip of Staten Island, there lies the Conference House and its surrounding park. Up until early 2000s, there was about half a dozen houses on Parks Department grounds that were vacated and demolished so that they could make walking trails and such. An ex-girlfriend of mine has lived in one of these houses with her mother and sisters. When I would spend the night, I would share the pull-out bed with her in the living room. However, there was one night where it was particularly hot, so we went upstairs and slept in her sister's bedroom since it was cooler in there, and they wouldn't be home that night. For whatever reason, I could not sleep comfortably that night. I would wake up and just look out towards the window across the room. Around the third time I woke up, I saw something standing between the bed and the window, but nearer to the window. I was told that this house was haunted, and in the year and a half since I started hanging out there with my ex and her sisters, I had never seen anything. So, this one night, I see standing near the window a silhouette of a human figure. It was just standing there. Even though the room was dark, there was still enough moonlight illuminating the room, yet what I saw was pitch black. I'm talking as black can be. I was not able to make out any facial distinctions. It was like devoid of anything human. It really just was a black silhouette, and it was terrifying. After staring at this entity for what seemed like forever, or just 3 seconds, I woke up my then girlfriend. I asked if she was seeing what I was seeing, and she did. I quickly asked what we should do, and she said that we should go downstairs, to which all I could say was, okay. Luckily, the door to the hallway was about 2 feet away from the bed on her side. After she got up, I quickly followed. Instead of getting up on my side, which would have placed me between the foot of the bed and the entity, I rolled across the bed and hurried on my way out, never looking back. That was the one and only time I ever experienced anything in that house. But that moment has stayed with me for nearly 20 years. Even though those houses were demolished in the early 2000s, I don't dare walk down that block at night. This probably won't be as interesting as most of the posts here, and will probably be long because it's been happening for a while, but it's real and current, and I could really use some help figuring out what to do. To be honest, I don't really know how to start, as it's my first time posting here, but I will do my best. Me and my fiancé live together with our dogs in a really old house that I'm almost certain the previous owner, an older gentleman, passed in well before we lived here. I was told that he was a recluse and not really anything else that I can recall. I've lived in this house with my parents for some time now. Before, it was just me and my fiancé. My parents aren't dead, they just moved. It's always had a pretty bad vibe, and never really made me feel all that welcome. There have been a few instances over the years, mostly noises up in the attic or in the walls, but, most interestingly, the smell of cigar smoke likes to come around sometimes in random rooms. My mom has asthma, so no one has ever been allowed to smoke inside. Once my parents left the house, after a pretty nasty divorce, I only mention it because I notice a lot of encounters having to do with negative emotions. Me and my fiancé have been happier, honestly, since it's just been us, but the weird stuff has been getting worse and worse lately. The feeling of being watched has been tenfold, to the point where it literally feels like someone is about to breathe down your neck. Our dogs have also been acting pretty weird, staring and barking at nothing way more than usual. That, and our dreams. I have always had interesting dreams, but only here have I dreamed of being watched or being intruded on with occasional self-death dreams. An example, a waking dream of someone barging into my room and staring and charging at me, or being stared at through the vents. But more noticeable and harder to explain is our windows constantly coming unlocked as of the past few months. They're not complicated locks, and it happens so frequently that we started actively checking them to make sure that they're still locked sometimes. And they won't be, or they'll be partially unlocked. It's a lock that swivels left to right over a bump to click in place. Not something that happens on accident. The noises have gotten more frequent and louder, and things get moved when no one is around to move them. Just tonight, I got frustrated and threw a Powerade bottle in a bag into the kitchen, and my fiancée didn't go into the kitchen once. She literally didn't even get off the couch. And the bottle, 30 minutes later, is on the counter upright, when I know that it was on the floor. Also tonight, the noises were really loud. So I checked the house again, and of course, no source. And it doesn't seem to happen upstairs while I'm actively looking for it. It literally sounded like someone was dragging something through the wall. It's getting to the point where I'm worried that we have an actual person in the house sometimes. But I'm almost certain that I've checked the house over 20 times, and nothing shows that to be the case. It's honestly grown to be more and more of a concern, and I could really use some peace of mind. If anyone knows anything that can help or has had a similar experience, please help me out. There's a place in Nova Scotia known locally as Little Girl's Grave. It's a gravestone of a young girl named Catherine McIntosh. She died of an illness and was originally buried in McLennan Cemetery. However, due to a dispute with a neighbor, her body was dug up and moved to the side of Greenvale Road in front of the family farm. One night, I went with 2 friends to visit the gravestone. It was a dark and gloomy night. Driving down the eerie winding road until we came upon the location, we'd actually brought a toy to leave at the gravestone. The local lore surrounding this site says to leave a toy for her and to never take a toy away. It wasn't until we left and began driving down the dirt road that we had a paranormal experience. We noticed on the front windshield in the condensation a small child's footprint on the glass. It was so detailed and human-like, it scared us quite a bit, to say the least. One of the friends that I had visited the gravesite with, we worked at the same restaurant at the time. A few days after we had visited the site, we were working together, and we both heard something truly bizarre. It was the sound of a child laughing, very faintly. We both stared at each other in disbelief, and we had no idea where the sound originated from whatsoever, as there was no one around except the 2 of us. Not long after this, we had a falling out and have not spoken with each other since 2013. This is one of the only paranormal experiences that I have encountered in my life. If anyone who reads this has had any similar experiences at this gravestone, please share it with this community. Thank you for reading my story, and may you all have a good evening. When I was about 5 years old, my mom told me about a ghost story of hers. She was at a costume party and took a photo in front of her old family TV. I don't have the photo. They all looked at the photo and saw a little silhouette of a young boy, and they were absolutely flabbergasted, thinking ghosts didn't exist. A couple of years later, before I was born, my mom worked as a beauty therapist, and she had a client. And the client noticed a young boy, and the client then asked my mom, "Do you have a son?" My mom answered no, and then the client said that there was a young boy hiding behind the counter. My mom was terrified, knowing that it might be the boy from the costume party. Back to around the present day, 2022, I was 12 years old, and one night before I went to sleep, my eyes flashed. Like when your eyes get rubbed too hard. and then out of the corner of my eye, standing right next to me, was a boy. He looked exactly how my mom described him. My mom always mentioned the spirit as a nice ghost, and that it would never hurt anyone. As I'm writing this now, I'm currently in my room, lying in the place the spirit was last found, and I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about how it can probably hear me right now. We think that it's my older brother, who died at birth, just watching us. So that, my friends, was a collection of true paranormal stories. Some truly haunting experiences by Redditors and subscribers that were submitted to me, or that I got from the subreddit, all requested, all permission granted. I never use a story without permission. And, yeah. Definitely some good, creepy stories in this collection. Hopefully you all thought so as well, because, in my opinion, I think they were good. But that's just me. How about you let me know what you thought? The easiest way for you to let me know what you thought is by leaving me a comment down below telling me what you thought. However, maybe that's not your style. Maybe you would rather do something like just hit the thumb button, the thumbs up or the thumbs down button. Either one. It's expressive, so you get to choose which one it is. And if you are new and want to let me know that you really liked my content, hit the subscribe button. That sends a very clear message. Yeah. All that said, friends, I hope you're having a beautiful week. And obviously, this is video number 3 this week. We've had a Monday, a Tuesday, and a Wednesday. What secrets, what surprises does the rest of the week hold? Well, you'll just have to tune in to find out, won't you? Yeah. Anyways, I hope you're having a good week. I hope I do see you on the next video, my friends. But until then, remember, you are loved, you are valid, you are important, you are the best you that you can be. Never let anyone tell you otherwise, and never ever forget it. And of course, until I see you again, much love, and sleep well.